since Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their dogs were all found dead at their Santa Fe home.
An autopsy was performed. Initial findings noted no external trauma to either individual. The manner and cause of death has not been determined.
Fans all over the world were stunned when the news of Gene Hackman's death broke, not just because of the loss of an iconic actor, but because something about his death felt off. The details of his death didn't quite add up. How could a man with such a larger-than-life personality and a career so powerful die so suddenly with secrets seemingly buried alongside him? What really happened in those final moments?
Along with an extensive investigation of the home, has all but ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning.
If there would have been a gas leak, I think we would have still found it.
Stick around, because what we're about to reveal will leave you absolutely shocked to your core. Gene Hackman's mysterious death. On the morning of February 26, 2025, Gene Hackman was discovered dead at his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Strangely enough, this wasn't an immediate discovery. In fact, it took days for anyone to realize something was wrong. Hackman, who had lived a quiet life in retirement, wasn't someone who frequently appeared in public, so his absence didn't raise alarms at first. But soon enough, a maintenance worker noticed the house unusually silent and the mailbox overflowing. That's when things took a strange turn. The maintenance worker found the front door slightly open. After calling Hackman's name without any response, the worker stepped inside, and that's when he came across a distressing scene. Gene Hackman's body was found in the foyer, near a walking cane and a pair of sunglasses. Authorities later confirmed he had been dead for several days by the time he was found. Now, here's where things get interesting. Gene Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, was discovered in a nearby bathroom. She too had died days earlier, surrounded by a small heater and prescription bottles. It was a grim and heartbreaking situation. Both of them were gone, and their home had been silent and empty for more than a week without anyone knowing. The police determined that Hackman had likely passed away on February 17th, as confirmed by data from his pacemaker.
Investigators established that Hackman died on February 17th, 9 days before his body was discovered, by examining his pacemaker.
Gene Hackman was one of 3 million Americans to have pacemakers attached to their hearts.
There were no signs of foul play, no broken locks, no forced entry, and no visible injuries. Betsy's death seemed to follow closely after his, though the exact cause wasn't immediately clear. What made the entire situation feel even more unsettling was the fact that it took so long for their deaths to be noticed. Their reclusive lifestyle meant days went by without friends or neighbors realizing something was wrong. It wasn't until the maintenance worker decided to check on them that the discovery was made. The lack of immediate answers about what caused their deaths made the authorities even more uneasy. Hackman was 95, and while his age alone suggested natural causes, the fact that both he and his wife died within such a short window of time left many questions hanging. The house, which was once a private haven for the couple, became a sealed-off investigation site. The silence that had once been a choice, a desire for privacy and peace, now felt heavy and tragic. In the days that followed, police continued their work as they tried to piece together the timeline. The official statements remained focused on the facts: 2 deaths, close together, no signs of violence, and a home left untouched for days.
There was no additional outgoing communication from her or known activity after February 11th, 2025.
Gene Hackman's death shocked people all around the world, not only because of the suddenness of it, but because of the strange and unsettling circumstances surrounding how he and his wife were found. The news spread like wildfire. Social media platforms were flooded with posts, with some expressing grief, others confusion, and many demanding answers. People couldn't help but wonder how someone as famous as Gene Hackman could die in his home and go unnoticed for days. The silence surrounding the discovery of his body only added to the growing unease. Now, how exactly did the public react to Hackman's death? Keep watching to find out. Public reactions and conspiracy theories about Gene Hackman's death. At first, the public reaction to Hackman's death was one of sadness. Fans shared clips from Hackman's most iconic movies, especially The French Connection, Unforgiven, and The Royal Tenenbaums. People talked about how much his work had meant to them, how his presence on screen had shaped their childhoods, or how his quiet retirement had reflected a kind of dignity they admired. His death felt like the end of an era, but as the initial shock faded, a darker wave of reactions came out. This time, it was not just grief, but suspicion. People began to ask questions. If Hackman had passed away from natural causes, why had his wife, Betsy Arakawa, died so soon after? Why had they both been gone for days without anyone noticing? The police insisted there was no foul play and that there were no signs of forced entry and no evidence of violence. Yet that only seemed to fuel the public's confusion. The absence of clear answers didn't put the rumors to rest. Instead, it made people question everything even more. Social media became a breeding ground for speculation. Hashtags like about the mystery surrounding Hackman's death trended for days. People picked apart every detail reported by the authorities, and sometimes they twisted facts to fit their own theories. It didn't help that the police remained tight-lipped about certain aspects of the investigation, likely to preserve the integrity of their work. But this only made people more suspicious. The lack of transparency, in the eyes of many, felt like a cover-up, even if there was no solid evidence to suggest one. Then came the conspiracy theories. One theory focused on the timing of the deaths. Some people found it too strange that both Hackman and his wife died so close together. They wondered if something or someone had caused both deaths, suggesting they may have been poisoned or exposed to something lethal in their home. Others speculated about their medications, pointing out the prescription bottles found near Betsy's body. Could there have been a mix-up with their medicine? Had they accidentally taken something toxic? Or, as some whispered, had the bottles been placed there to create a false narrative? Another theory gained traction when people started questioning why Hackman's body was found near his cane and sunglasses. To some, it looked like he had been trying to leave the house, probably to get help. This led to wild suggestions that they had been trapped or under some kind of threat, even though the police confirmed there were no signs of forced entry. But the idea took root online. Some people started claiming that someone could have gotten in and out without leaving evidence, using methods the public wouldn't understand. It didn't seem to matter that there was no proof. The theory kept growing. The public reaction wasn't just limited to online spaces. News outlets, sensing the public's hunger for answers, began running segments not only about Hackman's life, but about the mysterious circumstances of his death. Some journalists stuck to the facts, but others leaned into the growing public intrigue, using vague phrases like unanswered questions and bizarre coincidences to draw in viewers. Morning talk shows debated the situation, with guests speculating on what could have happened. The conspiracy theories took another turn when people began to question the role of law enforcement. Some argued that if Hackman's heart had stopped days before his body was found, there should have been more urgency from the law enforcement to check on him, even though the reality was that Hackman lived a reclusive life, and long periods of silence weren't unusual. As the investigation continued, certain facts were released. As was mentioned earlier in this video, Hackman's pacemaker had stopped on February 17th, which confirmed the date of his death, but this only raised more questions for some people. They wanted to know how a man of Hackman's wealth and status could die alone, his wife following shortly after, with no one noticing for over a week. The cold, hard reality that their privacy had kept them isolated wasn't enough for many. It felt too simple. The public's reaction grew even more intense when the final autopsy reports took longer than expected. People began to wonder if the delay meant authorities were hiding something. In reality, the reports were following a standard timeline, but for those hungry for answers, the wait felt suspicious. When the cause of death was finally ruled as natural for Hackman and undetermined but non-violent for Betsy, some refused to accept it. Online forums became flooded with new ideas. Some people suggested Hackman had been targeted because of something he knew, though they couldn't say what that was. Others speculated that Betsy's death had been a reaction to seeing something terrible happen to her husband. And then there were those who believed it was all part of a larger plot, though they couldn't agree on what the plot was. Despite all this noise, there were some people who were trying to pull the public back to reality. Close friends of Hackman reminded people that he had lived a quiet life for years, and his death, though tragic, wasn't as suspicious as people wanted it to be. Some journalists pushed back against the wild theories, urging people to respect the family's privacy. Meanwhile, fans began visiting Hackman's home in Santa Fe, leaving flowers and letters at the gate. Some people even visited his favorite restaurant as a way of paying homage to him. But the louder voices, the ones spinning stories and digging for hidden meanings, usually drowned out these calmer responses. These reactions were not surprising, especially since Hackman's had such a huge reputation in Hollywood. In fact, he was such a big star that he had a lot of influence in the movie industry. Stay tuned to see how much impact he had and the legacy he left behind after his death. The legacy Gene Hackman left behind after his death. There is no doubt that Gene Hackman's death left a deep mark on the world. His impact on Hollywood, his influence on the people who worked with him, and the way fans remembered him all came together to paint a picture of a man whose work and presence shaped the movie industry in ways that were both powerful and lasting. Hackman's legacy in Hollywood is one that cannot be overlooked. He was more than just an actor. He was a force. From the 1960s through the early 2000s, his roles defined what it meant to deliver raw, believable, and impactful performances. Films like The French Connection and Unforgiven didn't just showcase his talent, they redefined the way people saw crime dramas and westerns. His ability to step into a character's skin and make the audience feel every ounce of emotion, fear, anger, or regret was something few actors could match. Directors and producers admired him not just for his skill, but for his dedication. He was known to be intense on set, fully immersing himself in every role, and that commitment translated into unforgettable scenes and stories. But Hackman's legacy wasn't just about the awards or the critically acclaimed movies. It was about the way he influenced others. Many actors, like Viola Davis, Tom Hanks, and Morgan Freeman, spoke out after his death about how much Hackman inspired them. Some had worked with him directly, while others had simply grown up watching his films. They talked about how he taught them the importance of subtlety in acting, and how a small change in expression, a pause in a line, or a shift in tone could carry more weight than dramatic outbursts. His performances were a masterclass in restraint and control, and those who paid attention learned that great acting wasn't always about doing more. Sometimes it was about doing less, but making it mean everything. Younger actors have often said that Hackman's work showed them what it meant to truly lose oneself in a character. He wasn't interested in being a celebrity, he wanted to be an actor, and there's a difference. The way he slipped into his roles, making people forget they were watching Gene Hackman and instead believe they were watching a hard-nosed cop, a vengeful sheriff, or a troubled father, set him apart. It's why his legacy continues to shape new generations of performers who want to follow that path to be known for their craft, not their fame. Apart from his influence on other actors, Hackman also left a mark on the audiences who adored him. People didn't just watch his movies, they felt them. His characters often reflected something raw and real about the human experience. He wasn't afraid to play flawed, broken, or complicated men. He didn't chase roles that made him look good or heroic. He chose roles that made him human. That's why so many fans connected with him. They saw their own struggles, fears, and hopes in his performances. When Hackman's death was announced, social media was flooded with fans sharing personal stories about the first time they saw him on screen, how his roles moved them, and how his movies became a part of their lives. It wasn't just about his fame. It was about how his work made people feel. Another part of Hackman's legacy was his surprising choice to step away from acting in the early 2000s. While many stars cling to the spotlight for as long as possible, Hackman quietly retired and moved to a more private life in Santa Fe. He shifted his focus to writing novels and living outside of Hollywood's glare. This decision only added to the respect people had for him. It showed that Hackman wasn't driven by the need for attention or constant recognition. He loved his craft, but he knew when to walk away. His retirement didn't weaken his legacy, it strengthened it. Fans and fellow actors admired the dignity with which he exited the stage, leaving behind a body of work that spoke for itself. After his death, the outpouring of love and respect for Hackman made it clear that his legacy extended far beyond the movies he starred in. Film critics revisited his greatest performances, breaking down why his acting was so powerful. Directors spoke about how his presence on set made everyone work harder and better. His co-stars remembered the quiet strength he brought to every project, how his dedication pushed them to elevate their own work, and fans, everyday people who had grown up watching his films, shared how Hackman's characters had given them comfort, excitement, and something real to hold on to. What made Hackman's legacy even more remarkable was the way it crossed generations. People who had watched him in the 70s passed their love for his work down to their children. His movies became classics, timeless pieces of cinema that still had a lot of influence decades later. A new generation of movie lovers discovered him through streaming services and film retrospectives, realizing that Hackman's kind of talent didn't have an expiration date. His work remained as powerful in 2025 as it had been in 1975. Gene Hackman showed the world that sometimes the most powerful legacy is the one that speaks for itself, quiet, steady, and unforgettable. Bruce Lee's early life and career. The news of Bruce Lee's open tomb was said to have sparked a lot of reactions from all over the world, to the extent that people began to visit his tomb in remembrance of him. The tomb was said to have brought back great memories of this great martial artist. What could have prompted the opening of his tomb after a very long time? Brace up for far more exciting revelations about the reported event. Before we dive deep into the account of his open tomb, let's take a quick look at his early life and career that led up to his fame, and why the world is so invested in news about his open tomb. Bruce Lee, who was born on November 27, 1940, was reported to be a Hong Kong and American martial artist, filmmaker, and philosopher. He was also known to be the founder of Jeet Kune Do, a martial arts philosophy, which was formed from his experience in unarmed fighting, self-defense, as well as eclectic, Zen Buddhist and Taoist philosophies. He had a career which lasted in Hong Kong and the United States. Bruce Lee was reported to be the first global Chinese film star and one of the most influential artists in the history of filmmaking. Bruce Lee, who was known for his roles in 5 feature-length martial arts films, was recognized as the one who helped to increase the popularity of martial arts films in the 1970s and in Hong Kong. Raised in British Hong Kong, Bruce Lee was said to have been introduced to the Hong Kong film industry at a very tender age by his father. His early martial arts experience included Wing Chun, Tai Chi, and frequent street fighting.
I have several questions. What is the highest technique you hope to achieve?
To have no technique.
Very good. What are your thoughts when facing an opponent?
There is no opponent.
And why is that?
Because the word I does not exist.
Bruce Lee was said to have moved to Seattle, where he registered at the University of Washington in 1961. He was reported to have started making money during this time in the United States, when he began to teach martial arts, even though he has always had the interest of having a career in acting. He was said to have operated out of his home when he started his first martial arts school. Reports have it that he added a second martial arts school in Oakland, California, which drew significant attention at the 1964 Long Beach International Karate Championships of California, which was made by demonstrations and speaking. He was later said to have moved to Los Angeles, where he taught some of his then students, which included Chuck Norris, Sharon Tate, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Cultural differences was said to have hindered him from fully expressing himself. After he played Kato in The Green Hornet, which was said to have introduced him to the American audiences. After he returned to Hong Kong in 1971, Bruce Lee was said to have landed his first leading role in The Big Boss, directed by Lo Wei. A year later, he was said to have starred in Fist of Fury, in which he portrayed Chen Zhen. He was said to have written and directed a film titled The Way of the Dragon. He was also said to have starred in the US-Hong Kong co-production Enter the Dragon in 1971 and The Game of Death in 1978. His Hollywood-produced films, all of which recorded great success, were said to have elevated Hong Kong martial arts films to a new level of popularity and fame, which sparked a surge of Western interests in Chinese martial arts. The direction and tone of his films, which included their fight choreography and diversification, was said to have dramatically influenced and changed martial arts films worldwide. Kung Fu films was said to have displaced the wuxia film genre fights. His fights were said to have been choreographed more realistically, discarding fantasy elements for real-world fights. His characteristics as a male lead was said to have gone from being a hero to that one that embodied the notion of masculinity. Bruce Lee was reported to have won several awards, which included the Golden Horse Awards for the Best Mandarin Film and Fist of Fury Special Jury Award in 1972, Hong Kong Film Award for Lifetime Achievement in 1994, Star of the Century Awards in 2004, the Asian Awards Founder Award in 2013, among others. His fame was said to have crossed borders beyond the European scene before his shocking demise. The truth that will be revealed next might be the most shocking revelation you have ever heard. His shocking death claims. On May 10, 1973, Bruce Lee was said to have collapsed during an automated dialogues replacement session for Enter the Dragon at Orange Sky Golden Harvest Film Studio in Hong Kong. He was reported to have suffered from epileptic seizures and headaches. He was said to have been rushed to the hospital, where the doctors diagnosed him of cerebral edema. They were said to be able to reduce the swelling through the administration of mannitol. On July 20, 1974, Bruce Lee was said to be in Hong Kong for a dinner with actor George Lazenby, with whom he was set to make a film. According to a report, Bruce Lee was said to have met with producer Raymond Chow at 2 p.m. at home to discuss the making of the film Game of Death. They were said to have worked until 4 p.m. and drove together to the home of Bruce Lee's colleague, Betty Ting Pei, a Taiwanese actress. The three of them were said to have gone over the script at Ting's home before Chow left to attend a dinner meeting. Bruce Lee was said to have taken a nap. It was reported that Bruce Lee was also expected to show up at the dinner but didn't show up. Having waited for a while, Chow decided to check up on Bruce Lee, but he was unable to wake Lee up. A doctor was said to have been summoned. He was reported to have spent 10 minutes attempting to revive Bruce Lee before he sent him by an ambulance to Queen Elizabeth's Hospital.
He got to the hospital and I saw him laying there. And I saw them do a big injection of something right into his heart.
Bruce Lee was reported dead on arrival at the hospital. He reportedly died at the age of 32. Bruce was said to be buried on July 25, 1973 in Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle. Taki Kimura, Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Dan Inosanto, Peter Chin, and Bruce Lee's brother Robert were all reported to be in attendance at the burial. Several rumors were said to have circled as to the cause of Bruce Lee's death. These included rumors of a supposed curse on him and his family. According to a report of autopsy carried out on Bruce Lee, it was reported that his death was caused by cerebral edema due to a reaction to compounds that were present in the medication he was said to have used. According to the autopsy results, it was observed that Lee's brain had swollen from 1,400 to 1,575, which represents a 12.5% increase. It was reported that Lee had taken Equagesic on the day of his death, which contained both aspirin and tranquilizer meprobamate, although he was reported to have taken it many times before. Although it was initially speculated that cannabis was found in Bruce Lee's stomach, which may have contributed to his death. The moment we have been waiting for is here. Get ready for a mind-boggling revelation that will keep you at the edge of your seat. Bruce Lee's opened tomb visit and reactions. Bruce Lee's tomb, which was recently opened, has attracted lots of visitors. The martial arts icon's grave, located at Seattle, is reported to not only be a tourist attraction, but a national and global pilgrimage site. Bruce Lee, who was reported to have died aged 32, is said to be living on in many ways. Since his death, it was reported that visitors have not only come to his grave alone, but in tour groups. The cemetery manager, George Nemeth Jr., said so many people visited the grave, which led to shrubs planted around the grave to prevent visitors from trampling on the other graves in the cemetery. It was reported that even on cloudy days, the grave site is rarely without a visitor. He said that people brought blankets to cover the graves of Bruce Lee and his son, Brandon Bruce Lee, who was buried next to him. He mentioned the fact that people came with figurines, crystals, candles, flowers, oranges, notes, and money from around the world. In a recent exhibition at the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience, titled, "Do You Know Bruce?", there were said to be displays of items such as dog tags, shirts, drawings, heartfelt letters, and a first-place medal from the New Jersey Martial Arts Academy. There were also reports of a pair of nunchaku, made by Bruce Lee, who deployed them with brutal precision in his movies. There was also said to be above the offering screenplay footage of visitors to Bruce Lee's grave from far places, which included New York, Denver, Mexico, England, and Kazakhstan. It was reported that the guest book in the Lakeview Cemetery office has messages as far back as 1999. That's not all. Nurlan Atakamov from Kazakhstan said that he worked hard to save money and to spend for his trip from Kazakhstan to the USA. He said the only purpose of his trip was for him to visit Bruce Lee's grave and his son's. Martin Serrano, a Taekwondo aficionado who visited the grave from Tucson, said, "When you think of modern martial arts, the only name that comes to mind is Bruce Lee." He said he used to teach martial arts, and Bruce Lee was a big inspiration for him getting into it. Others were said to have found a connection through his family history. Heidi Martinez, another visitor, who was also said to have been trained in Taekwondo, was reported to have visited Bruce Lee's grave when she was 18. She was said to have stood at the grave on her second visit and talked about how Bruce Lee had been an inspiration for her while she was growing up. Martinez's family, who was said to have immigrated to the United States from Guatemala, was said to have seen a connection between Bruce Lee's story and her family's. Kevin Dang, another visitor to the grave, spoke highly of Bruce Lee. He recognized how Bruce Lee was able to recover from his spinal cord injury and his effort in fighting for his family. He talked about how he inspired so many martial artists and actors. Bruce Lee's shop is also taught to have been created online by some visitors who took pictures of different sides of the tomb. The online shop is said to be available at different prices, which makes Bruce Lee's graveside images a profit-making venture. Some of the images available online carried different titles like 50 years after Bruce Lee's death, Bruce Lee grave site in Seattle Lakeview, Bruce Lee's grave. A Seattle landmark, all priced at $47 each. Lee's one-inch punch. Bruce Lee's one-inch punch is the most well-known move in martial arts history. As its name suggests, the one-inch punch is a technique martial artists use to hit targets at incredibly close range. The thought that, if done right, an attacker can exert enough force to bring down his opponent makes it unique. Bruce Lee's one-inch punch gained widespread recognition as early as the 1960s, about 10 years before Lee rose to prominence as a global martial arts celebrity. Lee became famous when he demonstrated it at the Beach Karate National Championship. At the time, the martial arts community took notice of him widely. Interest in Lee's one-inch punch increased dramatically as his notoriety increased. Although Lee made the move so famous that many renowned martial artists from different kung fu forms now utilize it, Lee remains the most well-known practitioner of the technique. Keep watching. The story is just getting interesting. Lee did not come up with the one-inch punch suddenly in 1964. It is based on Chinese martial arts in general and the instruction he received as a teenager. Lee's martial arts expertise began in the 1950s when he trained under Wing Chun Grandmaster Wing Chun, who laid the groundwork for Lee's form of Kung Fu, Jeet Kune Do. The one-inch punch's tenets derive from its theory, since Wing Chun is a fighting style for close quarters. Lee was already acquainted with techniques designed for close-quarters combat because of his training in Wing Chun. Before the one-inch punch was publicly unveiled, Bruce Lee's pupil, James DeMille, provided insight into Lee's development method. He claimed that Lee developed an enhanced version of an already known Wing Chun move. Lee attempted to shorten the technique by experimenting with various stances and angles, since he thought it would be more effective if performed from a closer range. Eventually, they found a combination that worked. Lee demonstrated its power once by throwing someone 16 feet back and landing them squarely in a chair. Lee's accuracy, instant execution, speed, a crucial attribute for which the actor is currently well known, and the precise angle at which he accomplished it are all responsible for his accomplishments. Well, what do you think about Gene Hackman and his wife's sudden deaths? Do you believe that there is some foul play involved in their deaths? Leave your opinions in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.